Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at in your day. Welcome to Strange Stories of the Stage. My name's Todd Strange. I'll be your host. Nice podcast today. This was actually the first podcast I've ever recorded in my life. This would be Omar Crook, my good friend, amazing tenor, great singer, good guy. And just wanted to, I think I did an intro, but I wanted to do a different one. So just wanted to say this is the first podcast I've ever done. I'm going to be horrible for a while. So thanks for tuning in advance. I'm going to be a little rough, I'm sure, for the first few interviews. A lot of ums, a lot of ahems, a lot of things like that. I'm not editing currently too much. Just kind of want to leave it raw unless there's something that needs to be cut out because it's inappropriate or something like that. But this is kind of a raw conversation. So I want this to be sort of what it is. Yeah, that's really about it. Enjoy Omar. Omar is a multi-talented guy. He was actually the first guy that did a podcast of our friend group and is continuing to do podcasts and is quite good at what he does. He's a great host. He has a great speaking voice, much better than mine. You'll hear that. And delightful. Great at interviewing, great at answering questions. As a singer, he is wonderful. He commands the stage. He is a great actor. He does wonderful stuff on stage. He's very funny. He's one of the funniest people that I know personally, just as a person. He's hilarious and great timing, incredibly intelligent. What more can I gush about my friend Omar Crook? Let's just get right to it. I'll cut in and enjoy the interview of Strange Stories from the Stage. I think you'll get some good stories from our experience. Sorry, this camera's doing some funky stuff. Those viewing on YouTube, still getting the feels of this new camera. But hey, it's a nice camera. So we'll get the kinks worked out. All right, thanks.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what this podcast was about, but I see what it's about now.
Oh, it's great. You're going to love this. Yeah, so I wanted to talk. Yeah, we're rolling. I don't know when I'll start this thing. This is my first one. First time ever doing this. So I don't know, but you have to know. You're my inspiration for doing this.
Oh, start.
Okay, I'll start right now. So here's the deal. You did this when you started a podcast, I want to say it's been close to 10 years ago, I think.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And it really inspired the hell out of me because I thought, I've always wanted to do something. I don't know why I want to do something like this. I'm probably just a narcissist, if we're being honest.
Honestly, it's fun. And I know that you like talking to people. I like talking to people. So
yeah, I love people.
And we have interesting stories.
Yeah, and I think I did a little intro before I invited you on, just saying this is my first one. You're my first guest, and for that reason, specifically because you kind of inspired me to pull the trigger on just making stuff, honestly. And it's kind of been an awesome ride because I've been doing content, I've been doing comedy and all these things, and I can't honestly say I would have done it had I not seen you do this podcast 10 years ago.
That's nice, man.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's true. It's a lot of, because it's kind of intimidating, just being on, you're like, shit, this is going to be on to everybody.
Well, so one of the things that you mentioned, I really believe in, and that is just to make stuff, right?
Yeah.
So the trick for me was to not judge the content that I was making, allow other people to judge it. And I know that you and I are similar in that we've got kind of perfectionist personality disorder, and
we're classical
singers.
And
and that can really what's the saying, good is the enemy of perfect is the enemy of good, which I think is true. I think it's really true. See, for instance, I just misquoted that. I just said that incorrectly. Now, don't edit that out because that's part of the deal.
I won't. No, I'm going to let this play. But that's a thing. That's a thing. What is the quote? I'm curious now.
The quote is "Perfection is the enemy of good."
Perfection is and I think that's right. I read a great. I don't know if you read this book, Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art.
No.
If you've never read it, this is for anybody the 5 people that listen to this, you should read this book in the sense that if you create anything, if you're creative in any way, if you're an artist, singer, actor, whatever, this book really breaks it down as to why you don't do things. Right. And I love that. Like, I don't need to know why you do things. We're all inspired by something, but it's always the things that get in the way why you never pull the trigger and start it. And it's usually a shame spiral of some sort, like, well, you're not good enough to, are you crazy? You're starting a podcast? Are you crazy? You're doing comedy? You're an opera singer. You went to school for, it's that sort of like those voices. Yeah. And it sort of breaks down why we don't, why we fail, why we don't follow through, why, and it's very interesting. Anyway, it's like a 2-hour, if you get the if you get the video or the audiobook, it's like 2.5 hours and you're done. And it feels like, you just feel like, oh, I got to get to work. Like, it's quite inspiring, I will say. So, and more inspiring than any book I've read about self-help or any of that stuff. It's like, I felt like it was the solution. You know what I mean? For me, it was just this, get up off your ass. Sort of
and the other thing, the other thing is that the thing that the podcast did for me too is that it gave me a little bit or a lot more grace about myself and how critical I am about myself. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to misquote. It's okay to just be yourself. And there are enough people out there that I think will like you. There are a lot that won't, but that's something that is okay. And it's hard for people pleasers like me to get over that and to be okay with that. And so I'm glad that you're doing this, is I guess what I'm getting at. Yeah. Because you really need some help.
I do. You're right. And this is not the answer, but this is a nice showing of my narcissism, I feel like, to the world.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're just going to go with that.
Hey, before we move on, how do you switch the screens? Like, I'm on top.
Oh, really?
And, I like to be on bottom, and I don't know how to fix that.
I didn't realize you were like that. I don't know. I got side to side right now on my view. It might be. This is, I just got this Riverside thing, so I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, that's all right.
I'm sorry, dude.
That's okay. Yeah, no problem.
There might be a tweak here.
No, don't worry about it.
If I find
I'll just look at myself.
That's what I do anyway. It's not about you. It's about me. So I basically want to talk about what we do. This can be rather specific today because we're both opera singers. We both have a lot of great stories. And a lot of those stories encourage us to go forward and move on. And some of those stories can give us PTSD to the point where we don't even want to do what we do anymore as artists or performers, Yeah. And I just kind of want to get into it a little bit and talk about just some of the crazy stories. I think everyone's got crazy stage stories, and it's usually like discussed over a beer or drinks, 2 or 3 drinks in, of like, oh my God, this story though, you got it. And this is kind of what this is. This is the 2 to 3 beers in conversations about different things that have happened to us on stage, based on our experiences, and just the crazy shit that happens on stage. That's really, and also just a view. I think it's interesting. It gives us a view on how the sausage is made a little bit more, from the artist's perspective. I think when you see it polished and perfected, like, we are perfectionists, and what we present is a lot of times perfect to the audience member, and we know full well that there's so much shit going on in the background that is just like put on with duct tape and barely hanging on by a thread. And so I think some of those stories might be interesting to people. So I'm gonna throw this out there. This is more about the guest, than I can probably come back with a couple stories to discuss based on yours, and maybe we were part of the same one because we've both been at LA Opera for 15 years plus. So well, first I want to, what do you have like a best moment, or in your top 5 best moments on stage that you've ever had? What's the one that comes back to you that you like?
I've got a couple. Like if you're looking for a funny story,
I want your best. I want your best.
My best.
I want your best. I want the one that, like, Yeah, I mean, if it's funny, go for it.
Yeah,
I want to hear.
Yeah,
a funny story.
yeah. I mean, I have I've got a couple of dangerous ones. They're not that.
We'll get
funny.
to those. We'll get to
yeah.
those.
So the one that I had, there are two things that happened at Opera Pacific. Opera Pacific was an opera company down in Orange County, and it went under, I don't know, a decade ago, or maybe longer than that, maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah. It's been a while.
And it was my first opera gig, my first professional opera gig. I was at Cal State Fullerton, and well, first of all, I started opera really late. I started when I was 24, 25. And,
that is late. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was at Santa Monica College. I'd been accepted to UCLA's creative writing program, and I needed one more class to transfer as a junior, and I couldn't get it, so I took a singing class, and I ended up singing for a living.
Yeah.
And so while at my time at Santa Monica College, I was just this huge fish in a very, very small pond. I could sing really well right off the bat. I was a tenor. I'm still kind of am a tenor, but I was a real tenor back then. And I just, I sang Don Jose as my first role. I didn't even read music or anything.
Jeez.
And it was, with an orchestra, and it was a lot. So,
man, with Gail, right?
No, that was with Sue Ann Pinner.
Okay.
Yeah, she's an OG. So anyway, when I got my first professional gig at Opera Pacific, we were doing Flying Dutchman. And I remember, I was really hot stuff back then, and I kind of came in, and I was like the new tenor, and everybody was curious about me. And then when we got to staging rehearsals, I heard the singers for the first time. And I'd never been in the same room with professional opera, like real professional opera singers. And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe how completely inept I realized that I was at that moment. And I came home, I was like 26 or 27, and I cried when I came home. I couldn't believe how far off the mark I was about my talent. And it was really humbling, super humbling.
So you didn't feel like you could match up with what was on the stage.
No way.
Yeah.
No way. And this leads me to my first funny story, and it was during that first show, Flying Dutchman, where we had this spot, this part in the story towards the beginning, where it's on the deck of a ship.
Yeah.
And the trap door opens, and we all come up out of the trapdoor, kind of like we did in the Rossini.
Like a clown cart. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really strenuous. And we get up there, and we're all huffing and puffing, and we're in 50 pounds of wool clothes and pea coats and hats and stovepipe pants and the whole thing. And there was this guy named Lee Caduti who was really funny, a really funny guy, and I always loved Lee. And he was like the old-timey tenor there. He'd been there from the beginning.
He'd show you the ropes, right?
Yeah. Really, really nice guy, though. And he wasn't that old, but he had been there much longer than I'd been. And so he was kind of, I don't want to disparage him because he's so nice, but he was kind of clumsy. He was kind of a clumsy guy. And so we come up out of this shoot, and we're on stage, and we're arm in arm like this, and we're supposed to we're supposed to pretend like the ship is listing from one side to the other.
Right.
And so we're in a line, we're all stepping over, sidestepping, and cross-stepping back and forth. And none of us saw it, there was a rope that was left on stage by stagehand or the crew or somebody. And of course, Lee was on the end, and we get all the way to stage right, and then we start listing back to stage left, and his boot gets caught, and we literally go down like dominoes.
It was literally like a tug of war being lost right there in the moment. Oh my God.
And it was so funny. And he was the first one to get up, and he pops up downstage center, turns up towards us, turns up stage, and goes, yeah, I mean, during a performance, and we're all, you and I have been on stage where I'll let off a shot over the bow when I'm not supposed to be singing, and everybody starts laughing, and so it's one of those. It's one of those moments. It was, I don't know. And then the same season, this was my introduction to professional opera. The same season, we did La Traviata, and during the Brindisi, again, Lee was supposed to take Violetta, and it was a period production. She had this big hoop skirt and lots of gold gild, and it was really beautiful. And so he was supposed to take her and spin her around in this little dance move, just a little spot.
Flurry.
And he ended up walking up the front of her dress. and of course she fell towards him and he fell towards her.
Oh, God.
And being much larger than she was, they ended up going backwards and hit the table where the big banquet table, and knocked a lit candelabra off the table, and wax went everywhere and fire went everywhere.
Oh my God.
It was very exciting.
So what, and this is during, so for those that
during a performance.
Those that don't know, Brindisi in Traviata is you've heard it on every, if somebody who doesn't know opera is listening, this happens beginning of the opera, and it's in every like airline commercial, and it's like so it's very famous. Like, it's one of the things that people go to see for this opera. Sure. Like that, like, I can't wait for this hit tune. So during the hit tune, they basically set the whole stage on fire with
just pandemonium.
Oh, that's so great. Now, was there reaction? Do you remember if there was reaction from the audience?
I think I'm probably exaggerating it. Like, I love
don't
telling
say
stories.
That. No, don't.
So here's the thing. So my wife is very literal, and so just last week I was telling a story, and I was embellishing it. And my wife said in front of everybody, she's like, "No, that didn't happen." And I said, "Sweetheart," I said, "Listen, nothing ruins a story faster than the truth. So just let me tell a story."
Yeah, let it be this.
So in my memory, it was something, and I think we must have stamped it out real quick. It was probably much more minor than. And then another thing happened at Opera Pacific. Now that I think of it,
it's the bangers. It's all from Opera Pacific. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's. I don't want to say there's a reason they closed down, because that's not fair, because it was not that, but it definitely had more of a homey feeling to it, like
like on the outside.
A family.
Yeah, I agree. I did this for those that don't know anything about Opera Pacific or the history of like opera in Southern California and whatnot. This was kind of, if you were on the inside, apparently from many, many, many colleagues that I know that have performed there, it felt like that. It was kind of a down-home company. But on the outside, it was presented as an A-level opera house with a high-level budget, and they would get high-level singers a lot.
Right.
It was mismanaged, apparently, which I've heard from several people, from you, from Marty, from Ernie, Alvar, a lot of my friends. But the appearance from the outside was kind of gold encrusted, but from the inside, that gold just kind of peeled right off. Right? Is that kind of the deal?
A little bit, but not in a way that was
cheap,
negative in any way. Yeah, I mean the patina that wasn't part of what the audience experienced back for us backstage was actually really collegial, very much like Opera Pacific, very much like LA Opera, but they had half the budget. They brought in really good singers, either singers kind of towards the tail end of their careers or up and comers, like trying a role for the first time. It was a really good house for that, and consequently we had a lot of great singers. But it had, like the lady who ran the back door was this old lady from New York, and she would always like call you sweetheart and honey, and if my mom wanted to come back, backstage, they would always chat and give hugs, and it was a much more casual atmosphere than LA Opera. But
especially back then too, right? Like, we didn't have all the. I mean, things have obviously.
That's true. Yeah, after 9/11, and then a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, after a lot of things, after the pandemic. I mean, it's
sure.
all those things would change, but. There is something nostalgic. I experienced that at San Diego Opera too, a little bit with the down homeness, with the them knowing you by name, and jocularity,
and that's very casual. And,
exactly. You felt like you were part of something that was kind of like down home on the inside, and then from the outside we presented this really, really cool thing. So I think
very slick.
Yeah, very slick. And I saw productions there, and I agree that from the outside they looked very, very polished, very finished. And you guys had a beautiful, beautiful hall to perform in too down there in Orange County, which they don't have that kind of stuff anymore, unfortunately.
That's
sucks, true. I think it's actually a huge loss. I'm glad they're trying to do some more things, but on that level, I don't know what we'll see on that level for quite some time presented down there. So it's cool that you got to be a part of that, and it's also cool that you had stories that were things that would have happened maybe in college or like at a young artist program. So, okay, I have another. I'm going to segue. Those, would you consider those to be your funniest moments on stage, your best, or just something that you just like? That's just a nice nostalgic memory of.
I mean, there were oddities. There were. We were doing a Man on Let's Go, for instance, and I was playing one of the Petit Marquis, like with the white face paint and the mole and the powdered wig,
like a fop sort of.
Yeah, very foppish.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I was making my way up to the stage, and suddenly the music stopped. Like it was dead stopped. And so I ran upstairs and peeked out on stage, and the soprano had fainted.
Oh, God.
Like fainted cold. And John DeMaine, the conductor at the time.
Yeah, and also ran the company, right? He
ran the company. And so he had his baton, and he was cueing her. He was about to cue her in, and he just stood there like Medusa had passed by or something. Like he was a statue, just looking up at the stage. It was really funny. And the stage manager came out with her headset on. Her name was Jen, really nice gal. Walked out on stage. She was kind of tall and kind of lumbery, and she kind of walked out and stood over her, and looked up and said, "Is there a doctor in the house?" And then the curtain came down, and it was very dramatic. It was very, stuff like that just doesn't happen at LA Opera.
It doesn't, and I kind of wish. I mean, I don't wish anybody would faint on stage for that moment to happen. Maybe no, I really don't.
There are a couple that I would love to have seen faint, and just frankly fall.
Yeah, that's a different story. Yeah. And I know I actually know who you're talking about. Immediately, I'm like, oh, I know who. I remember
the sandwich lady.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. The sandwiches. Yeah. Anyway, we won't go there, but maybe we will. So let's segue. We've got some good funny moments. We've got some special moments that you have that kind of like help. Oh, this was awesome. This is why I do what I do. Scariest moment on stage. I think I know this.
You were there.
I wasn't there, but I was there. I was on the premises, but I wasn't on that side of the stage.
Oh,
right. I heard about this, and I was like, this couldn't have happened.
Yeah. So we were doing. What was the one that Thaddeus?
It was
directed?
It wasn't Scottish play. It was
it was
Nabucco, right?
Nabucco, it was Nabucco.
It was Nabucco.
Right, and I was on stage left, I think.
Yes, and I'm stage right for this. I remember because we're coming on. Yeah.
And we were going on for the big chorus number.
Va Pensiero.
For Va Pensiero, and I think it was a dress rehearsal.
Okay. Like we were in.
And anyway, I was, and you and I always sort of, for some reason, leading the chorus on or taking them off or doing extra little things. And
we
so
just like to do bits. We're stage. For those that don't know, we like to eat the stage if possible.
Yeah, all the scenery. Yeah, all at once.
All of it.
So I was at the front, just off stage left in the wing.
Yeah.
And half of the chorus was behind me, and for some reason we were all kind of pushed up. They were all pushed up right to my back, like we were all packed in, ready to make our entrance. And I noticed that I was in sight lines, which means if you're standing off stage, you can see the audience, which means that they can see you. So really you want to step back into the wings a little bit more so that we don't spoil the magic. And so I said, hey guys, I turned around, I said, hey, psst. I said, everybody step back, take 2 steps back because I'm in sight lines. And so we took a step and a half back or so, and then suddenly, it was very quiet, and I hear this, and I didn't pay any attention to it, and that sound was the result of a steel rod that must have been 7 feet long or so, came out of the ceiling area and came down and impaled itself into the stage about 3 feet ahead of me, right where I had been standing. And it stuck in the stage, and it was like doing, and Marty, our friend Marty, his hand came across my shoulder, over my shoulder, and he grabbed it to stop it from shaking. And I remember, I think everything stopped. I think the rehearsal stopped, and I was okay for about 15 seconds, and then I got really. I was really
shook up,
shaken by it. It's like the whole thing. Like I started thinking about my kids and them not having a dad, and it definitely would have 100% killed me
if
it had hit me.
No
and
doubt.
It would have hit me had we not stepped back. So that was definitely the most dangerous thing that ever happened to me. That and that terrible set that we all got injured on, the Rossini Cenerentola.
Yeah, Cenerentola, where we had sort of the moving. It looked it reminded me of like a modern Mario Brothers set, because we had these like things,
like
all
blocks.
These,
they were like blocks and platforms
on motors, on actual like
which
motors.
They didn't tell us about.
No, and
until we were standing on them.
Yeah, and that was the thing with this production of Cenerentola that we did. It really did feel like Mario Brothers, because we were having to jump from platform to platform and then off the platforms, but we weren't told that they were on a fast motor. And there's no stopping when a motor is there's no stopping the motor, basically.
Well, there is, but it really comes to a screeching halt, and then everybody falls over like dominoes. Which
it's not safe. It's not. It was not a safe set, I will say. I mean, it was safe by the sense that people walked it and said, "Okay, I guess this is going to be okay." But that's the one thing about doing stage stuff. I mean, we're in a lot more danger, I think, a lot of times than the audience can perceive that we're in, just by little things, by spatial reasoning on stage.
Things like a flag that gets tilted with the ropes, and a weight slips out of it and hits
I want to get
the
back
stage.
to this. I want to go back to this.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
That to me, because Cenerentola, that was no big deal. But what you're talking about was that's a huge deal. And not that anyone did anything wrong. I mean, I'm sure that never happened again with that stage. It probably had never happened before. They probably didn't tie those seams, on either edge of a flat, two-dimensional flag thing where it would weight. It's one of those dowels that basically weights down something. And
so you bring a flat down onto the stage, and maybe it has some scenery on it, or a tree, or a pillar of some sort, or building. Yeah, and somehow one of the ropes got pulled and the other one didn't, and the whole thing tilted
and slid
out. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's crazy. That's a really good story.
Yeah, I mean,
now that you're alive, it's good. If you had died, it would not be a good story. And we would not tell it. But we're telling it because it's a good story. You're alive. That's crazy. So did it affect? Did you think at any point at that point you're like, well, how much? I mean, is this worth doing still, or anything like? Was it any of that kind of? Did any of that like cross your mind in that like panic mode? 15 minutes.
Not really. Not really. So I'm kind of a. I mean, you know me pretty well, so I'm generally really mellow, and I just let things go.
Yeah.
But then I do have this switch where I kind of fire with both barrels. But
you're like me. When you get
pissed off,
didn't happen. Yeah, when you're pissed off, it's like you see red, and then you settle down and say, what happened? Yeah, I get that.
So on in that circumstance, our union delegates, they both fired with both barrels. So like it went all the way to the top right away. So I didn't feel like I needed to make a stink out of it. We have representation to do that, and from my recollection, I feel like it was resolved reasonably. So, accidents happen, and
would you say
people have died on stage before, and that's people die at accounting firms too. I mean, people die at work sometimes, so that's just how it is.
Do you feel like I feel like this is the advantage of working a union job sometimes, so that you have the checks and balances of people like making sure that everyone's safe and ensuring that. I feel that's I've always vacillated back and forth on like union houses, non-union houses as an artist, and now coming up through it and working for a union house for this many years, I can definitely say that the problems get solved way faster and way more equitably when you have mom and dad in the room, so to speak. It's a lot better. I agree
for sure. It's funny that you kind of dismissed that Cenerentola set though, because I still have a dent in my left
you got really
I got shinned. Yeah, I shinned it real good.
Like Johnny swept the leg on that.
Yeah, bleeding. Like it was terrible.
Oh, that's
and I still have a dent in my shin for sure.
I mean, I got stepped on by other choristers that didn't want to get on the set, and then I got jolted a bunch. So I remember my back getting a little jolted when we had to hold that position and the motor starting. It was like
yeah.
It was like one of those.
you have to brace yourself.
Yeah, and really be at like a plie, and we were in a frozen position, which never looked frozen to anybody because we were all so startled that the damn thing would start and stop on such an abrupt, like what the hell? Yeah.
Now, do you remember Greg Geiger? Greg Geiger went down hard. He really took a spill.
He did, and I think Mark Kelly did too. I think they both had.
There were a bunch of people getting injured.
It was just one after, I was just glad every time. Like, God, I'm glad that's not me this time. Not that because I'm like, it's gonna happen to all of us at some point. Yeah. It's like we just watched. It was like, oh, there goes. It was like being in a like. It was like. This is horrible. It was like being at the end of like Full Metal Jacket with the sniper and you didn't know who was going to get next. I was like, who's going down? And there are a lot of shows, folks, like that where, the thing is with a lot of these productions, which is a little different, I would say, than other shows. Most shows have a longer residency in a house than we have. And most of the prosceniums that these houses are being put up on are a little bit more regulated to their dimensions, I guess.
Yeah, our stage is quite large.
Our stage is weird, and it's not large in the sense that it's good large. It's weird and it's wide, and it every time they try and move a show that wasn't meant for that hall in that hall, there are massive spatial reasoning things to accommodate for as an artist, as a set person, as a director. Everybody in the room is always shuffling, so that makes sometimes the reason for error higher with some of this stuff.
Yeah. Hey, I've got a question for you. There's one thing that we've never talked about. Do you have any superstitions at all?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Like you said, the Scottish play. Is that one of your superstitions?
I don't know. Since we were talking about bad shit, I just didn't want to say the name of the opera because I was like, this is my first podcast, so I don't really want to we're talking about things going wrong. One of my superstitions is I'm a huge procrastinator in life, which is why I have to try. It's always my attempt to be more type A, and it never works out, so I'm always trying to find other hacks and ways to be more organized so I can get more things done in life. It really just it's really a matter of how does Todd get his shit together, and a lot of times he doesn't, but I'm always striving for. So one of the things I would say when I get nervous about a gig or a role and it feels daunting, or it feels like something I just didn't want to do, I force myself to do it because I feel like this is your resistance. And if you read this book that I was talking about, War of Art, it's all about resistance. And it's like your body telling you reasons why not to take the gig. And it's mostly because I want to take the easy path, I think, instinctively, which I don't recognize in the moment. But it's my reasoning for saying, no, you need to lean into this. This is going to be painful. It's going to be painful to learn because you're seeing the mountain and you're standing at the bottom of it. But when you climb this and do it, I guarantee you'll feel better about all of this than if you don't. Now, there are certain gigs that you should say no to, maybe sometimes things like that, but when it's that feeling, I don't feel like that's the reason to say no, if that makes sense. Does that? And there is a weird instinct that goes, I don't know if this happens to you, but where it's like, hey, you want to do this role? And you're like, oh yeah. It's like this Trump role that I have to do in Detroit. One of the reasons I got into comedy was because it just kind of drove me to a place where I was just pissed off about only doing new opera all the time. Not that it's not a good piece. It's a brilliant piece. It's well written. It got a Pulitzer Prize. It's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal story. It's very dark, but because it is about the Central Park Five, but part of me just didn't want I resist things that are difficult sometimes like that. And I think, or going to an open mic as a comedian or any of that kind of stuff, my body resists it. And I think that's my clue in of just the superstition for me is to push forward and to go try and follow through with that thing that doesn't seem pleasing in the moment, but will make me feel more accomplished and be more pleasing after because I did it. And it's a sense of accomplishment, and also realizing I really did want to do that. I just didn't want to put in the work. And so part of me is afraid of work sometimes. And so I wouldn't say it's a superstition, but I would say that when I get that feeling, I have to really think about my choices in that moment and push towards the difficult, the hard, as they would say. Let it be okay, let it be difficult, let this be hard, let this be something you maybe is going to be a challenge. It's going to be walking through molasses a little bit, you know, and not comfortable. It's not going to be just like throwing your running shoes on and going for it. You're going to have some resistance on this. And I think that's how we grow as musicians, as artists. I think just like doing a podcast, like I almost called just like, maybe I'm not doing this, and I'm glad I'm doing it. So that's the biggest superstition I have, I think. Also, I think if I go about something a certain way and I remembered that I did it that way, sometimes I'll go into it the same way just because I don't know if that's superstitious or like that was really effective. If you do this again, chances are it's probably going to be pretty effective. I have a couple pairs of shoes I think I've worn that I knew I sang well in, and I'm like, oh, you sang well in those, maybe put them on. Like,
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do that sometimes. I not all the time, but there are, like, if I'm feeling vocally off, and I know I sang well in a specific piece of clothing, whether it be shoes, whether it be a tie, whether it be whatever, part of me feels like I can channel that good mojo energy. And I think if you believe in it, you will. I don't think it's it might be all bullshit, but I think there's something, connected to the universe on that, at least with your own spirit, that puts a confidence gem in your basket and allows you to kind of run with it a little bit freer. And when we all run freer, we have the confidence to do things even if we're not feeling like totally 100%. We just have that freedom of trying things. Like, I know if I'm not in good voice, I won't try things because I get very safe. I put a bubble around it, right? Oh, no, I can't. And it gets to the point where it gets anemic, so you don't even try anything. And then you're just in shit voice the whole time. And so the times that you have to, you got to be careful, but you can't just not. You can't, you got to do something, and so there's that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's my superstition. It's all things to warrant more confidence in whatever I'm about to do. I think just things that will help boost whatever demons are saying you can't do this right now, or you shouldn't do this, or whatever. It's everything to avoid the can't and to provide the you can do this, and you have the choice of doing this. There's nothing telling you can't do this right now. So,
but you don't have a thing like you have to eat a certain dish, or you have to take a certain walk, or
do you have that?
I used to. Yeah.
What is it?
Well, when I started, I was an adult, so I just learned about. So I started singing just by copying opera singers.
Sure.
I just
we all do that.
Imitated opera singers,
of course.
So
that's
I read a lot about all the greats, and so for a couple of years I would walk around looking for a bent nail like Pavarotti used to do.
Yeah, that's right. That's his deal. The bent nail on the set. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I forget I think we were doing opera scenes. And I had to do I had to grab the soprano and sing behind her, kind of like a Nelson Eddy type deal. And then I poked myself in the leg with a bent nail. So then I stopped doing that.
You were in the prom pose. You were in the prom picture pose, and
that's right.
That's awesome.
And I got real close. Yeah, like real close.
Oh, and
funny. And we ended up going out for a little while after that too. Maybe she thought the nail was, I don't know.
Hey, is that, or are you just glad? Yeah, that sort of vibe.
And then I had these things, like the right tea, this throat coat tea, and not eating after a certain time, and it becomes a liability after a while, and I just stopped.
Neuroticism.
I stopped. And the thing is too is when maybe that's why I don't sing principal stuff that much anymore, because I get very if I don't sing well, I should have done this, or it's just a lot. It's a lot. So so no, I'm not superstitious anymore.
The only thing I will say, I get a little weirdly superstitious, and this is stupid because like every voice teacher and most people would say, don't do that. But I love a piece of gum while I'm singing.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
And I sometimes feel like I sing better when I have that gum there because it just keeps everything kind of like lubed up and doesn't like, it kind of gets the phlegm to thin out without having to chug a bunch of water. And because we sing in costumes that are compromising to like going to the bathroom and things like that, sometimes before a show, I don't want to chug a bunch of water, but perhaps I'm already hydrated from the day. But, right before the heat of battle, I'll want to pop a gum in just so I can be like, so
good. You don't have to bite your tongue or bite your cheek or do these weird things to get moisture in your mouth.
And
I'm not. A real pain.
It is a pain, and that's a good point that you brought up. Actually, I used to have to do that too, and I get a little dry and nervous and stuff, and that gum just sort of like helped that out. So, do you have like I'm going to pivot. Do you have like a worst? You talked about like beating yourself up on stage and stuff. Do you have a worst moment?
Oh, sure.
You're willing to share? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I tell this story a lot to my students now because I've got some kids that deal with anxiety.
Yeah.
Singing's a really exposed place to be psychologically in front of a group of people. There's nowhere to hide, really.
I agree.
And especially when you're doing something like Mozart, where there's technically and literally no place to hide within the music. So,
agreed.
In college, once I went to music school, I was cast to sing Tamino in the Magic Flute, and
great role.
And yeah, it was a great role, and it was a big like what do they call it? Interdepartmental collaboration between the drama department and the dance department and the music department. So I was really happy about that, and there's a big set and great costumes and everything.
That's cool. Yeah.
And I remember being backstage waiting for my entrance. And for people that don't know Magic Flute, the tenor comes in very quickly, and it's
right out of the gates.
It's like zu helfen, ich verloren.
Big fat A flats.
Big. It's like right out of the gate.
Yep.
And I went out to sing that, and my throat just clenched on me.
Oh God.
And I could barely get sound out, and I remember like sweating through my costume and feeling panicked, and this just horrible feeling. And I had like 5 of these shows to do, and every night it got worse. And I was starting to like really have so much of a problem where like the rest of the cast would come around and like try and help me. So it's quite embarrassing. And I remember I had this class. It was the history of music in Mexico or something, and the teacher I really looked up to because he was a friend of Aaron Copland's. He was an old man, and he knew Copland personally. And I always thought it was really fascinating.
Pretty awesome.
And he was from Texas. He had this Texas drawl, and I remember after the run of Magic Flute was over, I went to class, and he said, "Real nice job there, Crook. I could hardly hear you." And it really it was like the final nail in the coffin for me.
Shit.
And so it sent me to a performance anxiety specialist.
Yeah.
She was a violinist. She was a clinical psychologist and a professional violinist. So she had a lot of insight into how to deal with it.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Yeah.
Well, it didn't help at all, really.
Okay.
Her name was Roxy. And she was real pretty.
So that was a draw, yeah.
That was it, and I think she thought the same. And we just ended up flirting for 6 months.
Oh man!
And it really didn't help at all. The thing that really helped, and this is really accidental.
Typical tenor. This is such a tenor move. Is that you start hitting on your therapist after your throat closes on it. This is just so textbook, dude. I can't even you couldn't write this. Yeah.
Well, that's how I got through my piano class too in college. I didn't play piano at all, and my piano teacher was Swedish, and she was really pretty, and so she gave me private lessons at her house, and I ended up staying over one night.
Do we need
I passed. I mean, I can't play a lick of piano, but I ended up passing. So that was fine.
And that, my friends, is how you do it.
So anyway,
God.
The thing that really helped my anxiety was when I had my son William.
Yeah.
When he was 6 months old, I started having these palpitations.
Right.
And I remember I used to play tennis in high school and college, and sometimes I'd have to take a break and like lean up against the fence and cough or catch my breath. And I always thought that it was just like
exertion,
like pulmonary. It was like pulmonary or something, because it felt like my lungs. And it turns out, to make a long story short, I have this heart condition, and the doctors prescribed beta blockers.
Yeah.
And I took the beta blockers, and suddenly it doesn't, you can't get nervous while you take beta blockers. It's the craziest thing. And that's like my silver bullet now.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that reminds me of that audition that I had when I took beta blockers. And
well, hold on. Put a pin in that. I want to, because I want to ask you, did this make you want to quit when you did it? Did this afterwards? Did you want to conquer this, or did you want to quit after your throat?
Oh, you mean up? Back in college?
Yeah.
No. I went to a therapist with good intentions to really try and get to the bottom of it. And I had, I'm 54 and I've been in the chorus for 19. I'm going on to my 20th season, but I used to sing a lot of principal stuff. I had an agent for a little while, and I sang around the country, and I had the beginnings of what could have been a pretty good career, I think.
Yeah.
And so I really had to deal with it. I had to deal with it as I was being hired to sing, concerts and roles and stuff. And
yeah.
So,
I mean, I'll just say, you were the. I mean, when I came into the chorus, you were the guy who did solo stuff. I mean, and Omar. I just for all those that don't know Omar, he's a phenomenal tenor. I know he like downplays that stuff, but he's a phenomenal teacher and phenomenal tenor.
Thanks, brother.
No, really, truly. And I've looked up to him for years, mostly because he's taller, but also because he's a good singer.
That's funny.
Thank you.
I enjoyed that.
Thank you. It was my dad joke for the day.
Well, I feel the same way about you, Todd. I've always admired the way that you sing, and you're a great colleague, and we're always having fun on stage. And
yeah, we're goofballs.
The thing I like too is that when I get small roles, you support me. When you get small roles, I feel I support you. I feel like we're very collegial that way, and I think it's really important.
I think that's changed. Not changed between you and I, but changed universally, globally. The support. I know that when you and I came up through the ranks, I often want to talk about this, but it was more competitive and more cutthroat amongst colleagues, even if you're like in a college together. So we all supported each other, but we all kind of wanted to beat each other out in like one way or another. It was more sport-like based, I feel like. And I don't feel that way as much anymore. And I think it's for a good thing. I think the competition is more with ourselves, or the realization of where the competition should be is within ourselves as artists, and not so much like, well, he's a better tenor than me or this and that. It's like you kind of, I don't know. For me, growing up in like NorCal and doing a bunch of like, sports and stuff growing up, it was always sort of the same feeling. It took me a long time to get that through my head that like, no, this is artistry, dude. It's not like you're not trying to like beat your buddy out. You're like,
right.
It's like
there's enough room for everybody to be successful. Yeah,
and I think that's changed. At least it's changed in my mind and heart. But I also think it's changed universally. Do you think that that's true? Do you feel that it's a more supportive atmosphere amongst other artists that as it used to be, or is it just nicer and we talk about each other behind each other's backs, or do you think it's more collegial? I feel like, I don't know.
Yeah, I've always felt. Oh yeah, I said collegiate, didn't I? That's funny.
Well, I mean, it's,
leave that in. No, leave that in. I feel like I've always believed that you kind of reap what you sow.
Yeah.
And if you're kind and supportive, I've always, from the very beginning of singing, when I first began, my teacher, Sue Ann Pinner, said something really important to her class, to everybody. And she said that this business is tough enough.
Yeah.
On its own, that it can beat you up, and it can chew you up and spit you out.
Absolutely.
It can.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
So, and she said there's enough space for everybody to be successful, and we must support each other as artists, because the business sometimes will not do that for you. Most often, the business part of what we do is pretty brutal. And
agreed.
And so we should support each other, because makes it so much harder to behave that way. Not only for the people around you, but it ends up catching up to you. It comes around,
Yeah, I feel like if you're crazy enough to do this as a living, you've got to support, and you're amongst other crazies that are willing to do this for a living. You got to support each other, because there's too much. It's too hard. You're exactly right. That's a really good quote. I hope people listen to that, because I think that's.
Yeah, your success does not equal my failure, and my success does not equal your failure.
No,
it's not how it works.
No, it's not. It's exactly right. It's and it's really your own journey. It's really your own journey of perfecting your own skill set. But it's hard. I do find that it gets difficult in the mix of wherever you're living, when jobs are scarce or whatever, and the calls come out, and sometimes you're on it and sometimes you're not. It does get like you do get this feeling of failure sometimes. I've certainly dealt with it myself,
sure.
And not feeling as good as my other colleagues if I see them on the roster or not, or whatever. It's like
that's unavoidable.
Yeah, I think it just takes time to like deal with those thoughts, push that demon away, and then get to work.
Or a role perhaps that you've done a couple times, and suddenly it's given to somebody else.
Right.
This season, you have to kind of.
I mean, that happened. That's happened to you. It's happened to me. Happens currently. I know exactly what you're talking about. In reference, and it happens to all of us, I think. But
you suck it up. Stand up straight and suck it up and just do your thing.
Be a professional. Yeah, remember that this is a profession, and it isn't school anymore, and we're not.
Right. It's not a popularity contest.
No, this is for real money and for real bill paying, and this is real pragmatic stuff. At the end of the day, it is a job. So it's like we have to honor it as a job too. I mean, has your feeling? I think you've kind of answered this, but I'll just like. Do you feel like your reason for performing has changed over the years? I mean, why did you perform when you were like 24, 25 when you first got into it? And what's the difference now looking back on it? What's the take on it now?
Well, I was aimless for a long time, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I'd taken so many college courses, and I really had no direction. I moved out of the house when I was 17, and I had to go to work, and I tried to figure it out. So when I discovered that I could sing, I felt like Charlie in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like I had found the golden ticket.
Sure.
I found something that I could do really well without any kind of training. I mean, I just knew how to sing, and so that solved that problem. It wasn't because I had always had a love affair with classical music and I always wanted to be an opera singer. I'd like that to be the case. It sounds more legitimate, but that just simply isn't true. So I very quickly began doing it because I felt like a sideshow, almost like I had this circus power that people wanted to see, and that's probably why I didn't leave the state to go to music school, because I got into schools that would have taken me other places, but I kind of looked at it as like a goof, almost like I was just this lark like a party trick that I could do. And then I started to not sing very well in college, like around Magic Flute, and that made things really confusing, because the only reason that I really enjoyed it was because of the attention that I got from it, the applause and the accolades and people wanting to be my friend, and all that's just the really surface kind of stuff. And so that I really went through it for a while, like trying to figure out what it was that I was doing. And then I just discovered that because I've now, I've been doing this for such a long time, and it started at Opera Pacific. I made really great friends at Opera Pacific, and I found that singing in the chorus was not as, especially when I came to LA, I was still singing principal stuff, and I think I had just gotten back from Opera San Jose a couple years into singing at LA Opera, and being out there and singing, but what I really enjoyed was the camaraderie of the chorus.
Yeah, it's a good group.
And that's really what motivates me. First of all, working with Grant for 18 years was great.
We could talk about that for an hour, yeah, for sure.
So that alone, he actually helped me really fall in love with opera. I was a directly correlated and a direct result of Grant's enthusiasm for what we do.
Yeah.
And his ability to tell us about it in a way that was exciting and inspiring. So in that way, it changed for sure. And now I really do it to be with my friends, because I do it because I really love coming to work.
Yeah,
I really do. It's like whenever I'm feeling down, and some of us are prone to malaise and to melancholy here and there. And when I come to work, I always leave feeling better than I did when I got there. And that's been true the whole time that I've been there.
Same here. I did not want an opera chorus job, but same deal with...
Same. We're not trained to be choristers. No. You don't go to college to become a chorister.
No.
Of course not.
I mean, it's very similar to it's just like we all trained to want to find our light, and so it's... But I will say Grant really took the ego out of it for me. And so because that was for me what needed to be that's what needed to be kicked down, was my ego and to be checked at the door. And he made that, I think just his enthusiasm, like you said, made that possible for me. And it softened, it made me have more of a gooey center, so to speak. I was much more, myself, because I wasn't an egomaniac about being a tenor. I was more myself again, and then I could enjoy people. In turn, enjoy myself. I wasn't a monster anymore, and I felt like I was sort of on a path. I personally felt like I was on a path to becoming just this complete monster, tenor monster. So and you can ask Courtney about that. She could tell you all, just some of the thoughts and ideas and things. I just thought I was going to be the next Pavarotti for the longest time, but I love that it didn't happen, because similarly, I'll just tell you before we wrap this thing up, I'm not a big opera, I know a lot about opera, obviously. I know a lot about
because we've been doing it.
Been doing it for fucking, 20, 30 years now, but
right.
But it was not my path either. It was like, opera kind of found your voice, and somebody said, you could be an opera singer. Oh, okay, that sounds fun. Yeah, I always loved musical theater and just loved singing in general. And so I relate to I relate to that a lot, what you have to say about not necessarily needing to be an opera singer. You just kind of like, I don't know, I can do this thing, and I can't really see myself. I can't do a lot. This I can do really well.
Easiest thing.
Yeah,
it was literally the easiest choice. It's just the thing I could do.
And what's weird is that's something that nobody really can do. It's like not a lot of people could do it, but we're just picking this lowest thing. This sounds fun.
Exactly.
And it pissed everybody in my family off, because they were just like, what? Oh, because they all tried to sing and play really hard. Like, my mom was a pianist, like a classical pianist. She practiced and practiced. And my sister was a classical pianist and singer, and she practiced and practiced.
Wow.
And I just would be like, you mean do this and do that is what you want to do? Well, that sounds fun. And they were just like, dude, fuck.
It's a real dick move.
Real dick move. But I didn't even know at the time. I was like, this seems fun. I like it. Oh, I can hear that song and play it back and sing it back. Yeah. It's like, what? So that was when I was encouraged, like, no, you need to do this. I'm like, oh, okay. So same, I'm sure. Yeah, same deal.
Yeah.
I was younger. I did not have a late start, but I may as well have, because I didn't learn how to sing high. I didn't learn how to sing high notes for the longest.
You just squandered all that time.
I did. I just kept yelling the same way, saying it's gonna stick, and no, it didn't stick. Eventually you have to learn how to sing and learn technique. But procrastination.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you got anything else you want to say?
No. I think you're great, man. I'm
good?
glad that you're doing this. I'm really glad that you're doing this. Yeah.
Thanks. This has been really fun. It's my first one out of the gates, and I'm honored that you would come on and do this with me. And thanks for your time. Cause I'll send your check. Yeah. No.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, exactly. We all know we're all artists here, and we're just kind of doing this for fun. But I really appreciate it, and I hope somebody gets something out of this. And I'm looking forward to yours coming out soon. I did a little intro, and I said you'd done 2 very successful podcasts, which I very much think so, because I listened to every one of them. And thanks, I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to hear about some things coming up on the horizon for you. So, yeah.
Likewise.
All right,
brother.
Take care.
I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, you too.
Thanks,
All
man.
right, man.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.